Hey guys, I'm John with Tops and Brews, and I've consumed nothing but beer for the past 46 days. I think we should talk about that. So that's right, for 46 days in a row, I have not eaten any vegetables, meat, any juices, protein shakes, dairy, you name it, essentially. I haven't had any of it. I just had wonderful beer. There was a little bit of water involved too, but I think let's get into that and talk about it. But first, I'm betting you probably want to know where this crazy idea even started. Well, I already did a longer video on that, but I think you need just a quick refresher. So the Paulaner monks actually came up with this a long time ago, almost 400 years ago. They came up with this idea for a liquid bread as they fasted for Lent. And they're still making this recipe today. That's where we get the Paulaner Salvator. Cheers all. Oh yeah. Now this isn't your typical, Bud Light, Budweiser, German Pilsner or anything like that. No, this is a big, malty, almost 8% beer. What does that mean? Well, that means it's going to be higher calories. Well, why do you need higher calories? Well, because you're not eating anything. But that's what the Paulaner monks needed. Now, almost over 400 years ago, they developed this recipe and they thought it was actually too good. So they sent a barrel of it to the Pope at the time. And as it traveled through the Alps, unfortunately, well, weather changes at different altitudes and at different times, and it takes a long time to get from Germany over to Italy. And it takes a long time to travel to the Vatican. And during that time, that big old barrel, well, it spoiled. And the Pope tasted this, well, not good beer anymore, because it's a wonderful beer. And he basically lightly put it as, if anyone's going to drink this horrible tasting thing, bless them and bless their hearts, because that is really going to get them close to God and purify them the most. So drink up and have as much as you want. I'm paraphrasing, but I assume he said something along those lines. Now word got back to the monks about this and they celebrated. And at this particular time, monks were not yet allowed to sell the beer, but records indicate that there was a lot of celebration and drunkenness in town, and no one could quite figure out where it was coming from and how the monks ended up paying for all of their beer. One wonders. But anyways, that's where the story kind of comes from. Now they've been doing this diet for, like I said, almost 400 years. Now it's been tweaked a little bit here and a little bit there, but really not a whole lot. They've been encouraged to, yes, hydrate, so you have water. So when I say I've consumed nothing but beer, well, I do technically have to say I consumed water. And to live, you do need some vitamins. So I did take a daily vitamin. I don't really count that. So really all I had was a small daily vitamin, a lot of water, and well, any beer I really wanted. Now you're probably sitting there and thinking that this is physically impossible. Trust me, I'm not the only one to do this. There's been a number of people, not a lot, but a number of people, if you don't include the monks, that have done this before and documented it. It's not the same thing as your friend saying, yeah, I went on a weekend bender where I just drank beer. No, this is different. This is completely different. We'll get into that more later on. So I went and researched for over a year, talked to some of the other people who have done this, read a lot of the articles that they wrote about what happened, read up on the history of how the monks are able to do this. And I made sure to take all of the proper steps and precautions. Now, I'm going to walk you through that right now, and then we'll move on to some other parts. Okay? Now, like I said, I'm not the first person to do this. There's obviously the monks who did this. But there are a handful of other people who have documented their journey as well. And so I was able to read some of the articles about them or some of the vlogs that they have done. So I was able to get a lot of research in and just general nutrition fasting style liquid diets and what goes into all of those. So with a juice or liquid only fast, you're usually taking in vitamins from the juice. Now you're usually juicing some kind of vegetable and a fruit, and you're getting vitamins from that. So therefore, you don't really need to take a daily vitamin. Now you're still having to consume a lot of liquid and water to get through the day. So having water in a liquid only diet is essential. But most people don't sit there and say, yeah, I'm on a juice cleanse only diet, that they're saying that, oh, I'm also having water. It's kind of a given because water, you need it to survive. Okay? So beers actually do contain some bit of vitamins, especially more of the craft heavier style ones. It contains vitamin A, B, D, and E. In fact, in a pint of a beer, it gives you 23% of your vitamin B12. It's actually quite a lot. And depending upon the style you get, there are some minerals. So you don't necessarily need a whole lot of vitamins, but it's always good to have that kind of a one a day. So you know your body's getting the required vitamins it always has, okay? I'm not talking about your big domestic beers. You have to go for more of the craft, higher ABV, maltier style. Again, it comes down to the styles, the Gozas, the Belgians, the Saison, the farmhouses. You can even find some with lactose in them, so your gut health actually still stays fine. This kind of goes back to the whole traditional of what did the Bavarian monks do to where how modern people start to tweak it. Because there's a bit more modern styles of what is classified as beer now versus what the Reinhausgeboots would be considered beer. So, however you want to do that and classify that, that's up to you. Honestly, I did try to stay as close as possible, but toward the end, I just needed a bit more. And that's the other thing, you just have to listen to your body. Be very in tune with it. Now, something interesting starts to happen on just about any long-term liquid diet or long-term fast is your body goes into what's called a keto state. Now, what that is your body will start eating away at its own fat to get fuel. And in the process of that, you start to lose weight. Your energy level actually is still quite high, and there's a lot of interesting things that still go on. There's a lot of focus, there's a lot of awareness, your smell and taste buds just spike all over the place. It is very interesting. I mean, think of it this way. I didn't have any type of processed food or preservatives or any chemical in my body for a month and a half. My body got flushed out. Better than an enema. So, you want an enema or do you want to drink a bunch of beer? You decide. So the 46-day beer diet, I kind of wanted to talk to you about, well, the experience as a whole. I tried to do these weekly wrap-ups, and so now I'm going to try to give you a 46-day wrap-up. If you want to know more about the in-depth things that I was going through weekly, go check out the videos that I did. This is going to be a big summary of the 46-day experience. Delicious. So yeah, the first couple of days really wasn't actually that bad. The first day, you kind of feel semi-hungry, not really, because you still have food inside of you. I thought having a large meal, literally at 11:30, just chowing down food, trying to fill my stomach up, that's gonna get me the best possible because my system's gonna have food to digest. It actually wasn't probably the best idea because my body took a lot of energy trying to digest that food, and I wasn't replenishing that energy. I was only giving it beer, which again has some calories, but from going to a large calorie diet to an extremely low calorie diet, I wasn't replenishing it. It's like filling your car up all the time with gas every time you stop at the gas station to putting only $5 in. Yeah, I'm still putting gas into it, but I'm only putting $5. That's a good $5. So by doing a large meal just before I started, it kind of hurt me. I would say if anyone was to do this again, to slowly start like the week before, eating a little less and eating a little less and having a less meal, you know, it's like skipping a meal a day the week before to get your body not to have this big shock. So then the day 2 and day 3 were actually kind of hard because of that. So basically it was just kind of a shock to my system stating, hey, you need calories. Now, I was still able to function. It was completely fine. It was just, I would crash at like 8 o'clock and be like, I'm done, I'm ready to go to bed. I have no more energy. I was still able to do a lot of my normal things. The one thing that did kind of trick me is I was tired, so I went to bed early, so I was getting more sleep, therefore making me think I had more energy the next day because I got more sleep. So the first week in itself was kind of a lot of ups and downs. The first day was semi-rough. Second day was like, this is a breeze, this is easy. Third day was the gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. Oh, I need food, I need something. You know, that whole starvation thing. And it was then fourth, okay, that's not as bad again. It was somewhere between day 2 and day 3. It was like right in the middle, similar to say day 1. And then day 5, 6, and 7 were like, oh, okay, my body is coming out of the shock. It's learning a little bit how to deal with this, and I'm learning how much beer to intake. I had to find a system within those first 5 days of what to do, how to function, what does my body need to do? When do I need to have these beers? When do I need to have calories? What should I have before? So the very first day I had a beer for breakfast. And so it was like, okay, it's fine. Usually it takes about an hour for me to get ready before I go to work. So that beer pretty much went through me. The next day, I didn't do that. And I was like, okay, I should probably just have water in the morning. So I did water in the morning, and it was, oh, okay, this is a different shock. And also because I was digesting that food, there was a lot less energy. But still, day 2 was like, oh, I felt pretty good. I felt like on a high. It was really good. My body was still using a lot of nutrients. And it was day 3 that this happened, was I switched from the first 2 programs. So every day I took some form of a liquid for the first 2 days in the morning. It was usually a pint of either a beer or a pint of water. It was the very first thing I did. So I had liquid in my stomach. Then I took my multi-daily vitamin. The third day, I didn't do any of that, took my multivitamin first, and then chugged something. And I don't know about you, but when I take a vitamin first, even if it's immediately afterwards, I throw liquid in there, it doesn't matter. It just gives you that stomach gut rot of like, oh, I shouldn't have had the vitamin first on an empty stomach. It just kind of makes you want to throw up. So the third morning wasn't really all that fun because it took a lot of energy to combat that. And I didn't feel any better till around my second beer. And I was like, okay, I kind of feel normal because I wasn't ingesting calories to recoup that or help fight that feeling. So around day 4, 5, 6, and 7, I found my routine. It was a big English pint of water and then a multivitamin. I felt great. Every time I followed that routine, I felt great. Anytime I never followed that routine, which I did like 2 or 3 times through this 46 days, horrible morning. So the first week was basically just a bunch of trial and error stuff. But overall, wasn't a horrible experience. You kind of get through it. Then week 2 hits and you're just like, oh, I'm cruising. This is easy. I found my groove. This totally works. And that's when I noticed on the weekend of week 2, I had a couple of projects I needed to do. I had to cut down a tree, in which it wasn't like a big tree. It was still, but nice, probably 24-footer, 18 to 20-inch round base. So not like a huge maple or anything like that, but a decent tree you gotta cut up, and then I load it into the back of my truck. On a normal time, I would easily be able to do that, and probably within 45 minutes to an hour, be completely done with cleanup and everything. This took about 2.5 hours to do because I didn't have any energy. Once I started doing manual labor, I had no energy, fuel, for my body to go on. I just had this liquid grain. which is literally like burning alcohol, and alcohol burns very fast. So I had to take a lot of breaks, and then I actually had to go like have a beer. It was kind of a very funny thing, is I'd have a beer and then feel like, oh, I'm energized again 10 minutes later. It was a very odd feeling to tell your brain, go drink a beer, you're going to have energy, to when all of your life you've been like, I gotta do manual labor, don't have beer, because it's just going to slow you down. Especially when you're using a chainsaw. So yeah, that was odd. So what week 2 taught me was I had to learn to start pacing myself. It wasn't that I couldn't do the projects or my regular routine or maintenance stuff around my house. It's just I had to prep a little bit differently. I had to tell my brain and really plan ahead. So this helped prep me for the next couple of weeks to say, okay, I gotta mow the lawn. It usually only took me 30 minutes to mow my lawn. It's probably gonna take me an hour now to mow my lawn because I'm gonna have to either walk slower or take more breaks. So it wasn't that I wasn't willing to do work, it was just I had to really plan ahead and tell myself, okay, I can't burn through things like I used to and just rush through it, and I'll have the energy if I just recoup, 30 minutes later, I'll be like, oh, I'm refreshed and good to go. I had to take things a little bit slower. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so I'm gonna get there. I just gotta be patient and just hang on. It's gonna get done, it's gonna get done. Just maybe not as fast as I wanted to. And to me, I'm a type of person who's like, everything is a schedule, and I know how long a particular project takes. That's the length, and so I'll be done by X, so I can tell my son, my wife, my friends, yeah, I'll be ready and I'll be good to go in X amount of time. This was not like that. So that's what week 2 basically taught me. Something that did start happening in the middle of week 1, but really hit its peak and stride in week 2 was my senses really started to pick up. My smell was, I could smell things from 2-3 rooms back. I would be upstairs in my house and I could smell what my wife was cooking. And even if it was something that she likes that I don't, it smelled delicious. I would be at work and someone was microwaving popcorn at the other end of the building and I could smell it in my office. And it smelled like the best popcorn ever. It was just the cheap, 50-cent microwavable popcorn. There was also a sense of clarity that really started coming in during week 2. Like, I could focus on stuff a lot easier. Now, my taste was also changing in that my tongue was starting to become a bit more chalky and not necessarily dry, but it just had this really weird grainy feeling, like if you ate a lot of bread and then you didn't wash your mouth with anything and you just have that wheat bread taste in your mouth all the time. Because of that, my beer started to taste different. This Polliner Salvatore was the first beer I had and I thought it's delicious, and even now I think it's delicious. At week 2 I was like, wow, this is starting to taste like candy. It was sweet. All of my favorite beers started to taste sweet. And it was kind of slightly becoming the beginning of a problem. So then week 3 started hitting, and again, week 3 seemed to be like a cakewalk. It felt like a cakewalk. It was just breezing through. At this time, I was like really getting into cooking, and because my smells and aromas, so I wanted to like experience everything. So I kind of gave myself a guilty pleasure of going on Instagram and subscribing to a lot of food places and looking at recipes like, oh my gosh, these are so aromatic. I want to make these just to experience the aroma because it's the closest thing I'm going to get to eating anything. But I did start noticing that, like, okay, because my tastes are kind of changing, these beers are getting sweeter, it's kind of getting hard to drink particular styles of beer. So when I started looking into my fridge of like, what's the next beer or meal I'm going to have, I was like, the way I prepped for this wasn't necessarily probably the best, because I went and got a bunch of multi-grainy beers. I bought a lot of Salvatore, honestly, thinking, okay, this is going to be high calorie, this is malty, this is great. I bought a bunch of hefts, and then a nice variety of IPAs, thinking, okay, I got malty, grainy beers. I'll counteract that with hoppy beers. I can go back and forth. Unfortunately, modern IPAs nowadays are also very malty and sweet, especially the modern hazy ones. So it didn't really play out kind of how I wanted. So I had to go to the bottle shop, kind of buy a bit more different beers that I wanted. So I went for some stouts. So I was like, okay, it's still malty, it's sweet, but it's a different kind of sweet. You know, if you go with like a coffee. So I started trying to find my balance in beer and what I needed to have in that. And I knew that a light lager wasn't really going to give me the calorie count that I wanted, so I kind of stayed away from a bit of the lighter beers. That was my thinking at the time, okay? Hang on, we'll get to this, it's almost done, I swear. So that was basically week 3, was, oh, I gotta go prep a little more. During this time, again, this is week 3, so I'm 20-ish days into this whole experience. And people started asking me the big questions of like, how is your digestive system? How is your bathroom situation? What's going on there? I started getting a little bit more criticism online, or I should say questions online, and people be like, oh, I hear you do this, and I hear this happens to your body. We're gonna get to those, don't worry. There's gonna be another segment in a couple minutes, so we're gonna get to that. So that I started getting a little bit more recognized online in my tiny little community, in my own tiny way, that people started asking questions. You know, most of the time within the first 10 to 12 days, people are like, this guy's gonna give up or whatever, so I don't really want to pay attention. Oh, 20 days? Hang on, he's almost a month in. This guy might be serious. So people started taking me a little bit more seriously. Some not so much, that's fine. Got a few interviews, that was great. Got on the radio a couple times during the first 3 weeks. Got a couple cool other podcasts, beer casts, whatever you want to call them. They did some great interviews with me, so that was always fun. I kind of got into a new community, so that was really nice. And by that time too, I tried to keep up with that. So I'm keeping up with that social media aspect, and that pattern became kind of very hard at week 3. You kind of want to see your stuff be recognized, but that's also very hard too, because you're like, I got a family. I'm not trying to alienate them. I'm still trying to maintain my normal life. But by constantly posting, I'm kind of alienating them because I'm just on the phone, post, edit, you know, post. It's your, you know, so. Week 3, I started to learn how to balance that because I was talking to my wife. I was like, yeah, you're right. I might be ignoring you guys just a little bit too much. I need to put that aside. And so, you know, I would do like, oh, I'm in the shower. Okay, I'll post all my day before stuff while I'm in the shower. Something along that lines. And then people would be confused. It's like, this is the wrong day and this is the wrong number. So, whatever. But as far as body experience and issues and how hard was it, was I hungry? No, again, week 3, easy to get through. So week 4 was also very similar. The middle of the aspect of all of this stuff was all very easy to get through. The middle of this whole diet experience, you know, week 2, 3, and 4 were all very similar in that they were just, my body is in cruise mode. It's so easy to get through this. And it really was around week 3 and week 4 that I started to physically notice a physical change in my body. Of the weight that I started to lose and just the way my body was changing. You know, I already started the whole keto stage where your body starts eating its own fat for fuel, which is a great healthy thing to happen to you. Don't do it all the time, but it is a very healthy thing as long as you're doing it correctly. So like I said, the whole middle aspect of this diet, 2, 3, 4, those weeks just kind of all squished together and cruised by. My body didn't really have much of an issue. There was really no adjusting. I found my pattern. It was toward the end of this, you know, the end of week 3, week 4-ish, around that, I personally noticed a physical change in my body, my appearance. So then we come up into week 5. Now, week 5 is a 50-50 mix of cruising, and you start to notice the challenges that come ahead of you, because you are already at that 30-day mark and you've passed it, and then you're reaching that 40-day mark within, you know, that I got 1 week left type deal. Now, there was a very, very quick change from I'm in my 30-day count to my 40-day count. And within those 10 days, I personally felt a big, fast, quick change in my experience of feeling like I'm technically done, I'm almost done. Oh my gosh, why isn't this done yet? Why have I been doing this? This is taking forever. The best analogy I could ever come up with was like standing in line and waiting for the restroom. Every day you're a person back. So if I was at 14 days left, I was the 14th person in line to the bathroom, and I really had to pee. And then every person you get closer to the bathroom, you're like, oh, I'm gonna get there, I'm gonna get there. Oh, I can't hold it, I can't hold it. I'm gonna get there, oh, I can't hold it, I can't hold it. And it's just kept feeling like that. Just that, you know what I'm talking about. And so every day that you would get closer and closer, you were like, oh, I got this, oh no, I don't got, oh no, this is really hard and frustrating, I just can't wait to get done. I don't know if it was the idea of people constantly saying, oh man, you're almost done, or just like I started to prep for me to be done. So then we hit into that final stretch, the week 6, 6.5, you know, the last basically 14 to 10 days you need to be done. And that's where it gets rough. That's where it goes insane. That's where your mind really starts tricking you into being like, I could have that snack. I could do this. You know what, maybe I'll just be done. Maybe I'll just do 43 days is good enough. 39 days is good enough. This is good. This is fine. This is fine. I'll do this. Oh my gosh, I can't have any more beer. What's the beer I'm gonna have? I'm sick and tired of all these beers. So you kind of go a little crazy in the sense that you know you're on the very, very final leg of this. And you just want to be done because you're wanting food, you're wanting to be with your friends, you're wanting to hang out, to do all that kind of stuff. You really miss things. You kind of forget what normal life was like. As far as being hungry all the time, I still wasn't hungry. I still had my routine. My routine was actually working very well. In fact, by it was like week 4 and 5, I was in such a great routine that I was drinking even less beer. I used to drink 4 to 5 a day for the first couple of weeks. And week 4 and 5, I actually went down to 3 a day because my stomach just shrank so much that I couldn't fill it up more. And beer has a lot of gas in it, so when you pour it down into your stomach, it just expands. You can't just sit there and chug a bunch of Bud Lights. It just doesn't work that way. When you have food and your stomach is used to stretching and expanding, it's nice and loose, yes, you can chug that much down. So I was cruising and it was getting toward the end, and one thing I did start noticing was I really wanted to have that goal of 200 plus beers, and I had to start bringing up my numbers. So I did have to start having 5 a day. An interesting thing that did start to happen was that for me to do that, I did have to switch to lighter beers. And what I decided to do was switch to more sours, farmhouse ales as my 5th beer, because they're lighter in calories, they're lighter in flavor, should be fine. I should have already had my calorie count for that day, and I would throw in one of those and I should be fine. And my body just loved them. It could be the fact that my body was having malty, grainy, and IPA hoppy beers for the first 5 weeks. And at the end stretch, I was like, oh my gosh, something different. Or not, I don't know. But I started having sours, farmhouse, naturally fermented, and stuff that was a little bit more modern style of beers. And my body just loved it and was like, I want more of this. That helped tremendously. Honestly, the last couple of days, that really, really helped as a big switch. Maybe it was just something different in my routine, but that really helped. But another thing I did notice was going from 3 beers a day to 5 beers a day It took about 2 or 3 days to re-stretch my stomach back out to contain that many beers. But once I did that, I did find myself to have more energy, and some weird things started to happen. And this a little bit happened while I was going through it. Like, I would lose roughly about almost a pound a day. It was like 0.75 to 1 pound a day, and that's crazy, I know, right? We'll get to the full numbers real soon here. So for the last 14 to 20 days, something extremely weird started to happen. Little bits of this were happening all throughout it, but this was the most extreme amount. From going from 3 beers a day to 5 beers a day, I noticed that my weight would fluctuate a lot. And it was so weird because I was so used to losing around a half a pound to a pound a day. And that's actually really extreme if you think about it. I know it sounds fun, but it's extreme. It would be gain 4 pounds, lose 1 pound, and then I lost 5 pounds. But then I gained 3 pounds, and then I lost 1 pound, and then I lost 5 pounds. So I was actually losing even more weight faster. It was odd because I was getting what felt like a little bit more energy, so I was running up and down the stairs with my son, playing a little bit harder. It felt almost like back to its peak. So it was very interesting. You would gain 3 to 4 pounds, and then you would lose 5 to 6 pounds within 2 days later. So I'd go on the scale and be like, oh man, I just gained 3 to 4 pounds. And then 2 days later, oh my gosh, I lost 6 pounds. And so it would go up and down and up and down. It was very, very odd. There was still that idea of I'm so close to the end. It was very, very, very hard, and it was starting to drive me nuts. This helped for a bit of a distraction, but the last 7 days of this, so this is day 39 to 46, were the hardest I've experienced this whole time. It was the week of misery. It was every day was, I'm almost done, I'm almost done, I'm almost done, I'm almost, you just felt, no matter how many beers, no matter what I did, beaten and broken and exhausted, just more mentally, not physically. You're just like, I want to be done. I want to be done. I want to be done. I can't wait to be done. I can't wait to go back to normal life. I can't wait to do this. So that part was probably the hardest aspect. And then finally, day 46 arrived. My goal of 200 beers was reached. Number 200, again, Paul or Salvatore. And then I hit that actually pretty early. So I was like, I'm gonna celebrate with 201. That way I could say I had 201 beers. Don't believe me? No, here they are. Told you, 201. So during this whole 46-day process, I got a lot of questions and I wrote a lot of them down. So I wanted to address those to you now. So let's go ahead and do that. So over the past 46 days, I've gotten a lot of questions asked of me of just what's going on, how do I feel, and I didn't really have a whole lot of time to answer all of them. So what I tried to do is write down the most common questions that I got asked, and this is the time I'm going to be able to answer them to you. So go ahead.
All right, first question. What inspired this diet idea?
Okay, this diet idea was inspired by the Bavarian monks that I found, and I really got into this story researching it when I owned the tap room at the time, and it was kind of this big dream thing to own a tap room and then be the guy that drank beer for 46 days while he worked at the tap room and something along that lines, and then life just kind of got in the way and had to sell the tap room. I started a YouTube channel. I wanted to do something every year that was a beer themed diet, and this was the third year, and I decided to finally pull the trigger and do this. So yeah.
All right. Did you really only drink beer to survive for 46 days? No food at all?
Yes, no one believes me on this point. It was only beer. Now, when people say only beer, and when I say only beer, I mean, I do have to include, I did have water, and I did have a daily vitamin to give myself, but I didn't have any food, I didn't have any vegetables, I didn't chew anything for 46 days. I didn't have a protein shake. It was barley, hops, malt, yeast. And that was it.
And I, being his wife, lived it. It's true. I do not know why people don't believe this. That's just my own 2 cents. What time of day did you enjoy a beer the most? Was it breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or as a snack because you had a craving?
Oh, that's a good one. I would probably have to say lunch because it would be the first beer of the day. I would just be drinking so much water and it was just very bland throughout the whole morning that any form of flavor. But the odd thing would be that eventually over time, my taste buds eventually changed, and even that first beer was just like sipping on sweet candy, malted water. And if I didn't have the right beer, was kind of actually disgusting, but I just wanted the calories.
Okay.
But for the most part, it was lunch.
Okay.
Esque.
Listening to you describe beer makes me want one. It's like you're pretty good at that. What kept you going? Because 46 days is a long time.
Actually, yeah. Week 2, 3, and 4 were actually pretty simple. My body kind of cruised through it with support from people online and at home. It was relatively easy. In fact, I got to do some creative things with food and just using my sense of smell. And just using my sense of smell, I got to semi-experience food. So that really helped. What just kept me going is I'm that type of guy. If I just commit to something, I'm gonna do that. And if you know me, and any of my personal friends who know me will admit that if I say I'm gonna do something, and if it's crazy, I'm still gonna do it.
The actual definition of that word for it is stubborn, but also successful. So we'll just leave it at that. So how did you feel throughout? Do you feel like from week 2 to week 4, did you feel any major changes along the way that stood out to you?
Yeah, there was a lot of changes in clarity, actually. Like, I wouldn't say I could see things better. It was more just I was able to focus on things a lot faster and easier. I also felt like I was getting better sleep, better REM cycle sleep type thing. So I don't know if that equated to better energy, but I also did notice my energy would die very fast. So there was that aspect, but I always felt like I had really good energy when I had it, and it was always willing to do things, and I was always very focused, so I could always picture things how I was going to do it very easily. So that was something pretty interesting that I've never experienced before.
Okay, so it seems like it deepened your sense of logic.
Yeah, deepened my sense of logic and just way of thinking things through. Sense of smell was a big thing too.
Yeah, talk about that for a second, because I think that was one of the biggest things that happened within the first 3 days.
Yeah, my sense of smell just tenfold, hundredfold all throughout the whole time, probably within the first 2 weeks, just kept climbing. I could smell things from upstairs that you would be doing downstairs. I would smell things from a microwave that was at the other end of my office. I would walk by and someone like put tuna in the microwave, which would normally gross most people out. And I was like, this smells wonderful.
I seem to remember that differently because that was us, because we have a 5-year-old and he likes warm tuna and you thought you were going to die. So
there was that day.
I remember that being a little different.
Yeah, that was the other bad part. When something was bad, it was bad and it just rank.
Yeah. How is that now?
Stuck around for about a week, week and a half. And I could tell it was slowly dying down.
So it tapered off.
It tapered off, and it's probably right back down to normal now. So roughly after about 2 weeks or so, it dies back down to normality.
Okay. So what did an actual buzz feel like on this diet?
That's actually a very common question I got, because a lot of people thought I would be wasted the whole time. Having an empty stomach on a normal day and drinking booze, you get buzzed very fast. After about the 3rd day, my body adapted, and because I was drinking so much water, roughly around 2 to 4 liters a day, depending upon the day, I would just drink a heavy beer, 9 to 10, 12% beer, which normally on a normal day I would feel pretty good. I would be completely dead sober within 30 minutes.
So
it was still the same buzz.
Okay.
But it was such a fast-moving buzz. It would just, oh, I feel really good, and I just peed, and I'm done.
Okay, so if you drank more, like when you're going out with your friends or whatever, or you're doing the happy hour, and you drink more to keep that buzz going, if you did that on this diet, how did you feel?
Roughly the same.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It was the same. There was probably, out of the 46 days, only 2 days that I probably went overboard.
Okay.
And it wasn't really the amount of beers I had in that day. It was just consuming them back to back to back, all in a shorter period of time. Roughly about 2 hours after that, I felt normal, but then the next day I could tell it wasn't a hangover, but it was like, oh, I don't feel as good. I can definitely tell I felt like I overdid it.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it wasn't, oh, I'm hungover, my head hurts, and I'm sleepy. It was just, I don't feel as good as I normally would if I stuck to my regular routine.
Roughly how many beers did you have a day?
I estimated it was between the first couple of weeks, between the first 3 weeks, it was 4 to 5 beers a day. And then around end of week 4 or 5, my stomach just kind of got used to it, and I didn't even need to have that much. I actually shrank down to 3 to 4. It was actually really hard to drink 4 beers a day. I think because my stomach just shrank so much, and I wasn't doing so much physical activity. I will still do physical activity, but I just wasn't like, I'm gonna go do this project because I can and burn through it. I had to pace myself, and because of that, my calorie count didn't need to be as high. And so toward the end, it was 3 to 4 beers a day, but then I really wanted to hit a goal of at least 200 beers by the end of this, and I had to calculate how many. And it was the end of week 5 and week 6, or 6.5 essentially, that I had to up it to 5 beers a day. And for those first couple of days I had to do 5, it was like overeating a meal. It was just like, oh, I feel stuffed, I don't feel good. Yeah, that was just very interesting.
Okay, so this is kind of a 2-part question. So one of the number 1 questions you and I discussed while you were doing this, because mind you, I lived with him for 46 days while he did this. So a lot of people asked, and I asked this multiple times too throughout it, what was your favorite beer? But as this went on, I started realizing, was it that you had a favorite beer, or was it that you had a favorite style? Because maybe a style more ended a craving for you or sustained you longer. Was it more of a style, or was it an actual singular beer that you liked?
That was a very common question I got, and you asked that a few times too. At first, my thought into going into this diet was I'm trying to do this as traditional as possible. I only want to have beers that technically lean toward the Reinheitsgebot's traditional beer style. No adjuncts, no nothing, just the barley, hops, yeast, and malt. And over time, it kind of got really hard to find beers like that because, like I said earlier, my taste buds changed so fast that beers like this one or some of my favorite IPAs were tasting so sweet like candy. And I knew I needed high calorie beers. And to get a high calorie beer, you had to have a higher ABV, which usually meant a higher malt count. So I could never find a low calorie, non-malty sweet beer. So that's when I had to kind of abandon that thought process toward the last 2 weeks and just be like, well, it's still technically beer. It's classified as beer no matter where I go. And there are these particular adjuncts in there. So now I started the last 2 weeks really enjoying sour beers and farmhouse ales, something funky, just because there wasn't a whole lot of malt in those, or it was more like a smoothie style beverage. So it kind of was a meal. So it really was toward those last 2 weeks, week and a half, I really started to enjoy more wild ales or funky beers just because it was a different take and it was something different other than, 5 weeks of drinking malty, chocolatey roastedness, IPA bitterness. Even some of the most bitter beers that I've ever had before tasted like candy. So
Interesting.
it was very odd because I purposely went and bought a bunch of beers. Like, I know I love this beer, so I'll be able to drink it. Yeah, after the third week, I was like, I never want to touch that thing again, but I have so many of them.
Well, that's kind of the perfect segue to the next question that you got asked probably the most was, did you get sick of beer?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know.
No. It was after I was done, and then the next day, people were like, oh, you're just going to have water or something. Nope. I ended up having like 3 beers.
Yeah, I remember. Because I even said, are you not sick of beer? And like, no, I still love it. So that all of those kind of wrap into all these next questions. Did you miss hard liquor?
Yes, I did actually miss hard liquor because I really do love a good cocktail or sipping on a nice bourbon or scotch, something, just a little bit of it. Because there's just not that carbonation level that can upset your stomach after you drink so much. When I'm having food, the food is filling me up, and then the carbonation of a beer fills me up even more, and I don't like to feel that bloatiness. On this diet, I didn't feel that because I didn't have anything inside of me other than water and beer. So there wasn't quite this bloatiness. When I do have a meal, especially at nighttime for dinner or dessert, I will pour myself a nice, bourbon or something like that, bourbon on the rocks or whiskey on the rocks, and just sip on that. And it's nice because it's only 3 or 4 ounces. So I did miss that aspect, but I still really love beer. So
I feel like we're at the point that that's a given. I mean, it's just a given. So we got to ask this question because you've been asked it a lot. You've been asked it on the radio. What were your poops like? Let's just get down to it.
Yeah, and the times I could answer that question, I would tell people you have to have solid food to have solid poop. And so if you could imagine what peeing out both ends is like, that's what it was like. The good part is a lot less toilet paper and you are in and out really fast.
I'm going to give no comment on that. Just going to pass on that. So all in all, what did this diet cost in terms of money?
Roughly around $500 to buy, but then after bottle returns and everything like that, around $475-esque. You get about $20 back in bottle returns. I did have technically some extra beers left, so if I excluded that and just said, hey, here's what all the other beers cost me, but I did have some already stored, so I'm still going to stick around with that $500 mark.
Would you recommend this beer experiment to anybody else?
I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't discourage it though. I would say that if you were planning on doing something even remotely like this, 30 days, 2 weeks, 46, however long, don't be a fool. Do a lot of research. I researched this for over a year and a half, looking into things, reading other people's experience, gotten to talk to some of the other few people that have documented their experience doing this and got to talk to them about this. Don't sit there and think this is some college kegerator frat party type thing. It's not that.
You got that a lot.
I got that a lot. This is just as serious as any diet. It's a serious thing. So if you're gonna do it seriously. Don't do it foolishly.
What did an entire day look like while doing this?
So an entire day, my routine that I eventually took about a week to figure out was that I would wake up and I would go have a big pint of water. Usually it was like the big English Imperial pint, so like 22 ounces of water. And I found that if I had room temperature or warm water, which kind of sounds disgusting, but I could just chug that down in seconds. And then I would save about 4 to 6 ounces at the back end and go have my daily vitamin. So I just had my daily vitamin in the morning. That way I had some form of liquid in me just before I had my vitamin. And then I would go to work, start drinking my water, and basically wait till 12 o'clock.
Okay, so 12 o'clock was your first beer of the day.
First beer of the day was still 12 o'clock. I'm gonna try to have my beers or my meals during my meal time. And also I knew I wanted to keep my body very flushed and hydrated. So I knew that by the time my lunch break was over, I would be dead sober already. I could take a breathalyzer and still be dead sober by the time I was done with my 1 hour break. So if I had it right at my 12 o'clock, I'd have 1 hour and I'd be done. I'd be sober. So I knew I'd be fine. And then and then after lunch, I'd have more water. And I would drive home. During the drive, more water. I'd get home. I would need to have a beer right when I got home. Usually I get home about 5:30-esque. I needed to have a beer right then because I was probably 30 minutes away. I should have had a beer at 5. I was hungry. I'd have a beer, prep dinner for the family, and then have another beer while family was having dinner. So
right.
I'd essentially have a quick snack and then have another bigger beer for dinner. Play with the family, do whatever I needed to do, and then once the kid went to bed, probably have another beer if I needed one. And that would be the dessert or midnight snack, late night snack. And that's the day. Go to bed. Usually I went to bed a lot earlier, so roughly around 10 to 10:30, where my normal time on my normal days would be around midnight if I didn't already fall asleep on the couch. So
I think we've had like a top 3 questions, but if I was going to have it go to 4, I would definitely say one of the most popular questions was, would you do this again? I asked that a lot during this diet.
You did ask that a lot. As of right now, I don't want to do it again.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to doing it again. There are definitely things I would change.
That was a question I personally had was there anything you would do differently?
It's hard because I think this could have been done with probably 39 days or 4 days. I don't think I needed to do the whole 46, but then I kind of started thinking about that, where if I was going to do the modern 40 days of Lent, which when this diet was first made, you didn't get a break. And that was introduced later down by a different pope. But if I took a cheat day, which would have been every Sunday, I think my body would not like that because it would be going back into restart mode and I would be jump starting it. And it just takes time to get back into the swing of things of normal life, to rebuild your gut and your digestive system. And I think if you did that 6 times between the 40 days, you're probably actually going to struggle even more. So I don't know, but yeah, prepping, using particular styles of beers, knowing a budget, all of that type of stuff, I would have probably prepped for better
if I was ever to do it again. As far as next year, I'm not planning on doing this again. Maybe in the distant future to revisit just that experience to see if anything's changed, of how I feel older doing it, or knowing what it, maybe, I don't know. But
It's a never say never thing.
never say never, but right now, zero desire.
So another question, because I guess we're going for the top 5 questions then. The other question was, what was the first thing you were going to eat? So now that you're done, what was the first thing you ate?
Well, the very first thing I ate was a very simple ramen chicken soup type deal. Tried to be something light. And my gosh, that was one of the best tasting things I've ever had. It was like playing in the snow for 8 hours and having that 50-cent cheap hot cocoa, and it just warms your body up. And you know it's the worst, cheapest, watered down cocoa thing, but you're like, this is delicious. And that's what I had. I had a 50-cent thing of ramen. But it was the best tasting ramen ever. It just warmed my body up. But the first meal I desired was a meal that I particularly love, is one of my favorite that you make, is a bacon white sauce ravioli with some garlic bread, and that was delicious. It's very fatty, very gluttonous-y, but yeah, bacon, Parmesan, cheese, and noodles, and garlic. Oh, yes, so good.
At that point, you had earned it.
Yes.
I have one last question for you.
Okay.
You just don't get any time to think about it.
Ooh, hang on. Go.
Do you love your wife more than beer?
Oh, yes.
That's all my questions.
Okay. All right. Now, if there aren't any questions I didn't get to answer, go ahead and leave a comment below and I will get to it. So I do answer all the comments. It might take me a second or two, but I will answer that. So those are probably the most common questions that I got asked. And now I think let's talk about the big thing that everyone wanted to know. What happened to me and my body, and what changed? And we're going to go to that now.
All right, so now we're going to be talking about all of the stats, points, numbers, variables, all the good stuff that you've probably been waiting for this whole entire time in this video. But first, I need a beer. So let's go ahead and start with, well, the beers. Now, like I said, I had 201 beers. But when I say beers, I mean individual beers. I'm not necessarily counting what size of beers. Now, if you go and search what is a single serving of beer, they'll tell you it is a 12-ounce bottle or serving of a 5% beer. This beer right here, well, does not hit that. It's 6.7. Technically a little above a single serving. Now, a lot of my beers, because they had to be higher calorie, were a lot higher ABV. But I really wasn't going to get into the math of that aspect, because I would have had to have looked up 201 individual ABVs, and I wasn't going to keep that record. But what I did keep was the ounce count of each individual bottle of beer I drank. Now, a lot of them I drank 16 ounces, I drank 19.5 ounces, or I drank a big 22 bottle. So a total ounce count wise was 2,810 ounces. We can add a couple more now. So what does that mean? Well, if we were to take every 12 ounces and count that as an individual serving of beer, I had 234 servings of beer. How many people you know that can do that in a row? That's right. That's a lot of beer. So here's another interesting stat on the cost of this beer diet. Remember, I put that in quotes, okay? Is that I stated this cost $500 in total of purchasing beer. Now you can go ahead and deduct the $20 in deposit that you're going to get back from the 201 beers I drank. Technically, I have about $60 left in my fridge, but I also drank beers that were already purchased, so I kind of like balanced it out, and $480 is what it cost me end of the 6 weeks, okay? So that equated to $2.39 per meal, okay? I didn't have 3 meals a day. It ranged between 3 to 5 meals a day. But still, it averaged out to $2.39 a meal. So then I had an interesting thought about this diet, that how much would it cost to actually be on a diet and have, you know, health food shipped to you, given to you, however, prepped for you, you know, those delivery services that everything was given to you, just like a beer is prepped and ready and given to you. I found some interesting stats. So I found the average cost of 6 different food services ranging from regular food to specialty diet food. So we have Purple Carrot Food Service averages a $10 to $12 per serving. Trifecta Nutrition Food Services, which is a keto food diet, which actually was what my body went through, is a $13 to $15 per serving. Bistro MD comes in at $9 to $13 per serving. Factor 75 comes in at $11 to $15 per serving. Blue Apron comes in at $9 to $10 per serving. And probably one of the more popular ones is Nutrisystem, comes in a little bit different because it was kind of hard to figure out, but it comes in at $16.96 per day for a 7-day all meals prepped. That averages to $5.65 per serving. Now you have to remember that all of these services, you have to order a minimum of at least 1 month's worth of food. So you have to actually order 2 months worth to reach that 6.5 week equivalent. So you're gonna go over. So this is actually, for cost, pretty darn cheap. Again, beer diet, quotations, okay? So understand that. So here's probably what you all came and wanted to really see, is what did I lose in my weight and body transformation? How did I look? So at the start of this on March 2nd, I weighed in at 195.8 pounds. And over the course of 46 days, I lost a total of 31.2 pounds, as you can see here. Now at the end of this, I wanted to see, did anything happen to my body? So I went and did a blood work panel and a liver and kidney panel, and to see if I saw anything abnormal. And actually, there were some surprising things that went on. Now my blood work came back extremely normal, so that was good. But it was the liver and kidney panel that had some interesting things. Now when my liver and kidney panel came back with some irregularities, I wanted to talk to my doctor about it. So I gave her a call, we had a little chat, and she took a look at the stats, and she was extremely surprised at the results when I told her what I've been doing. Now when my BUN and creatine levels came back below normal, my doctor was actually extremely surprised, stating that someone who's going through a malnourished period in their life shouldn't see this. In fact, they should actually see an increase in this. They were actually quite surprised, saying that this was extremely good. Now they weren't extremely dangerously low levels, but they were just, you know, at the mark of being marked red and below. Now when my phosphorus and albumin came above normal, she looked at that and also stated, that's really good. Essentially what it is it's saying you're extremely hydrated and your body has too much vitamins in it. And when she looked at it, they were only a 0.1 over the number. So she really wasn't that concerned. But when these tests even go that above, the computer's gonna come back and say, yeah, it's irregular. So really my approach to this, it being my first time ever doing this, was extremely accurate. And this goes back to researching this and not just jumping head first and thinking, I want to lose some weight, so I'm gonna just drink beer for 46 days. No, this is serious. Research this, listen to your body. Don't just jump head first into something like this, okay? So let's talk about what happened to me after this diet and the few days after that. Now, as you know, this diet ends just before Easter. And well, most people that do celebrate Easter celebrate it with a big meal. Well, ending something like this, you can't just go in and be like, I'm gonna go eat a cheeseburger and have a fatty steak and it's so fine. No, all of your stomach, all of your digestive juices, everything, your enzymes, there's nothing inside of you. You have cleansed your body of every chemical possible, except ABV, the poison that, yeah. You have cleansed yourself of every toxin in your body, essentially, except hop, barley, malt, and yeast. So the research that I did, and from the information that I got from my friends and my other colleague who did this, Dale, shout out to him. He's been doing this for, I believe this is 5th year. So cheers to you, buddy. Now, with all this information that I got, it was essentially, you gotta go slow, you gotta take it easy, light foods. And so my first meal ever was just a light chicken broth noodle soup, essentially. I wanted just a little bit of carbs, but it was just noodles and chicken broth. That was it. Oh my gosh, it was so delicious. It was like the best tasting thing ever. And when I say best tasting thing ever, imagine going to the snow and playing in it for like 8 to 10 hours. And you're just freezing and your body's soaking wet and you're frozen to the core and your bones are just shaking. And you go inside and you have that cheap 25 packet of powdered hot cocoa with just some hot water, and you sip it down. And you know it's disgusting and you know it's not even good cocoa, but you drink it and it just is the best, most delicious, warming sensation into your body. It just fills you up. That's what that soup tasted like. So good. And it felt great. I had no problem with it the following day, no stomach issues, nothing that night, slept like a baby, felt fantastic. So the following day, going into Easter thinking, okay, I just have to take it easy. I'm not gonna eat a whole lot. I'll probably have like 2 tablespoons of like a mashed potato, some plain corn chips or some crackers. Nothing too big, right? Nothing bad at all. So in the morning I had some toast, felt great. And I prepped for a big family meal going into it. And that afternoon, started just little snacks here and there, but still kept my beer with me, so I knew I needed to still have some form of calories because I was being busy. And then came the meal. Now, we had a very wonderful roast, mashed potatoes, and just the typical stuffings of glorious, gluttonous amounts of food. And my plate was not very big. In fact, it was like a 10-inch saucer plate that I used. But I put just a little bit of everything and thinking I'm not gonna eat a whole lot, but I just wanna try it because my taste buds are just salivating and waiting, and I could not wait to just try something. And that's where things started to go downhill quickly. The roast, extremely delicious. But my father-in-law who prepped it told me it was a fantastic roast full of fat that got rendered down and was soaking in its own fats. And then he took that fat and rendered it down and used it to make the gravy that was on my 2 tablespoons of mashed potatoes. And then there were just a couple of other processed chemical things that I probably should not have had. And my stomach from the time of eating that meal erupted in a fiery volcano of I don't like what you're doing to me. Essentially, I was building a powdered keg of an explosion, and it did not want to come out the front end, if I can put it in the most gentle way as possible. So that night, starting around 9:30 p.m., I took my position upon the throne and did not leave it for more than 2 minutes at a time till 4 a.m. I could have sworn I probably released what felt like 2 gallons of liquid coming out of me. Luckily, I have a very wonderful and gracious wife who woke up early and rushed to the store and bought me everything that I should have been eating for the next couple of days, coming off of something like this. Yeah, those next couple of days after Easter were not fun. It does wane off pretty quickly, but the fool I was on that one aspect of this thing. So all of you that are saying, go eat a steak, go have a cheeseburger or something during this, or what are you gonna have your first meal? No, your first meal, your first 20 meals is going to be nothing but light bread, crackers, something very bland, okay? You don't even want like broccoli or leafy greens because that causes a lot of gas and it's very hard for your gut to digest it. You need to build your system back up slowly over time. So remember that. Think of it like having really bad flu and then you just had food poisoning on top of it. It's gonna take a couple days for your body to just get back to normal. Now, you also do gain quite a bit of weight back after this, and that can kind of mess with your psyche a little bit. But you also have to understand you're in a keto, malnourished state, and you have just basically taken away everything from your body, and then you're starting to reintroduce stuff, and it takes your body a lot of effort to digest that. So I gained roughly around 7 to 9 pounds back within the first 2 weeks. And then that weight fluctuated up and down, and it started to normalize in that, just like what you do in a normal day-to-day. You know, you weigh yourself 1 week and you weigh 3 pounds, and then you weigh yourself a week later and you're like down 2 pounds, and then you weigh yourself the following week and you're like up 1 pound. All depending on what you do throughout the week and what you've eaten and blah, blah, blah. So it took about 2 to 3 weeks, and then you basically come back to being your normal self again. So all in all, this is not a 46-day process and then you can just flip the switch and be going right back to normal. It is essentially a 60-day process, starting this, going through this body transformation, and then returning to normal. Now, going through this and looking back at it, I could say one would probably get the equivalent experience of doing this for roughly about 39 to 46 days. That last week is horrible. It is so hard to do, and I don't know if it is just that feeling of I'm at the end and I just want to be done. But I really felt that the 30-day mark, I was like, okay, I'm pretty much here. And then it was, you know, the 37-day mark, like, yeah, this is about as much as I'm going to get out of it. And that's when things were just like, yep, that's where I felt the best. That, you know, 37 to 39 day mark. So that is the end of my beer-only diet for 46 days. Did I miss any stats or information that you were wondering about? Did I hit something that you were curious and didn't think would actually happen? Or you're like, that is impossible? I would love to know in the comments below. So let me know what you think. Would you even try something like this for yourself? Let me know. See you guys in the next one.